The year is 2027, and humanity has never been so devastated as it is now. Poverty, violence, and infertility threaten human existence. The loss of the last child born forces the unlikely hero, Theo Farron, to go into action to protect humankind's last hope of survival. It's morning on a regular day in London. People prepare to start a new day at work and stop by a coffee shop to get everyday fuel. They are stunned by the TV news that reports the loss of the youngest person to be born. He was the last person to be born and had a celebrity status because of that. Theo Farron, a long-faced type of guy, watches the news, baffled. He leaves the crowded coffee shop kind of disoriented and perplexed, only to get even more confused as an explosion shakes the street. The coffee shop is destroyed. He can't focus on his work and leaves. The way back home shows a broken city with a segregation system that makes its citizens stop at several checkpoints. But London is the only city that stands against the dystopic reality the planet is facing. Some are desperate, some are just numb. Theo seems to belong to the numb group, but displays a friendly reaction as he sees Jasper Palmer, an old man that hugs him as a son. Jasper drives Theo through a rural area as they make small talk about the young man who passed away that day. The radio keeps reporting the drama of the immigrants trying to survive the catastrophe. Jasper's home is welcoming, and the two men comfortably discuss the fertility problem. Jasper claims to know an alternative to solve the issue, but Theo is skeptical as always. It feels like both men are trying to get rid of the heavy toll the discussion brings and get silly, like two boys fooling around. It's a new day in apocalyptic London, and Theo, once again, walks to work. Halfway there, a group of masked men toss him in a van. He doesn't understand what's happening until he's taken to Julian Taylor, the leader of the resistance. She's a brave and practical woman, and coincidentally, Theo's ex-lover, who insists that he helps her get a girl's documents to get her out of sight. Since Theo works as a public servant, she knows how far his influence goes, and it'd benefit the group's fight for survival. But Theo believes there's nothing he can do to help. Theo is taken back to the streets and moves on with his day amid the daily chaos. He's quickly summoned to a meeting with the minister who lives in the wealthy part of the city. That's an area Theo knows well. Theo and the minister, Nigel, talk about ordinary things over lunch. Theo gathers the small drops of courage and comes up with a fake story about helping a friend to see her sick brother. This way, she'd need clearance papers to travel. That's Julian's plan in motion. Nigel trusts Theo completely, so the documents don't take long to reach Theo's hands. On a bus, Theo and Julian rendezvous. Julian finally gets her hands on the document, and the truce between them ends right away as they engage in a long-awaited ex-couple argument. At their destination, a marginalized neighborhood that screams for help, Theo gets more and more puzzled. He can't follow why Julian needs these documents so badly. Julian knows that place very well. He demands explanations, but Julian is vague. The plan is to use Theo at the checkpoints to get the group through without any trouble. The only thing he's worried about is his payment. The road is calm, and the group has a moment to breathe while Luke, Julian's right hand, drives through a forest. The girl they have to protect is quiet and looks frightened, but she soon loses her tension as Theo and Julian fool around. Miriam, the last passenger in the car, is also there to assist Julian with the girl's transfer safely. The calm ends abruptly, and the storm takes place as a burning car traps them on the narrow road. A group of furious people attack them without mercy. Luke tries to the best of his abilities to get them out of there safely, but Julian is in critical condition after being attacked by a shooter. Theo has never been so desperate since he and Julian lost their baby years before. Luke, the driver, swerves the car violently in a reflex to save the group. The group is just petrified. Theo does everything he can to protect Julian, but she loses consciousness quickly. The situation escalates, and Theo's group doesn't know what to do next. The police stop them instead of addressing the riot issue, and Luke's first reaction is to throw his passport at them, proving he's a British citizen. The police don't know what to do either, and that's Luke's chance to put them out for good and run. So he does. After a while, the group is now a little safer, and grief strikes them. In the midst of chaos and sorrow, they find a quiet place to put Julian to rest in peace. As expected from someone who knew her for years, Theo breaks down in tears, but knows that their reality demands action, and so they leave. Everything is so intense that Theo hasn't stopped yet to fully understand why the girl named Key is so valuable that she needs protection at all costs. He just goes with the flow and honors his promise to Julian. They finally arrive at a safe spot in the countryside. Things are settling down, and now Theo has a better idea of the crowd taking shelter at their safe place. He, on the other hand, just wants to head back to London. Miriam takes him to the barn, where Key babbles about cows. She sounds like she is caught in a frenzy, some kind of adrenaline release, and talks faster after every second. Theo only gets more puzzled trying to understand his actual reason for being there. Julian was the bridge between keeping Key safe and using Theo for that, and she didn't have to go into details to make her plan happen. Now, both Key and Theo argue over the matter. Key needs to be protected, but now it seems like Theo has had enough of it. As if things weren't weird enough for everyone, Key calls for a drastic measure and unbuttons, thinking that this is her last resort to make him understand why she's so precious to the resistance group. Theo loses his grip as she does it, begging for her to stop, until he finally understands. The 18-year-old Key reveals her baby bump. She is pregnant, and the due date is close. Theo thought he couldn't be more baffled, but she proved him wrong with her pregnancy. In a brutal reality where people aren't born naturally anymore, Key represents a threat to the violent regime, hence the need for protection. Meanwhile, the authoritarian regime broadcasts that Julian, the resistance leader, has been put down, but they call her a... That's the image they have to uphold. The large group seems to be led now by Luke, arguing over what to do, but everyone is clueless. One thing they know for sure, the regiment that segregates and mistreats immigrants would feast over the news of a black immigrant, pregnant after so many years of chronic infertility. After the pointless discussion, Luke highlights the obvious, that it's up to Key to choose what she wants to do from that point forward. Theo and Key stare at each other. Later, at night, Theo can't sleep for obvious reasons, but something else gets him out of bed. Patrick, the hot-headed member of the resistance, arrives on a motorcycle in a state of rage. It looks like he has someone on the back of the motorcycle in critical condition. Luke is furious with him. As any sane human would, Theo gets closer to eavesdrop. The conversation reveals a shocking foul play against Julian. Patrick was the one that orchestrated the attack on Julian's car, following Luke's orders. That's the moment Theo sees Luke's true and cruel intentions. He's a resourceful and relentless man, and intends to keep Key's baby for himself. Theo's tension builds up. Theo is a practical man, who spent a long time trapped in his red tape kinda job, and now has to operate at a faster pace, and he doesn't disappoint. He flies to Key's bedroom, to warn her of Luke's plot against her. Theo gets there and gets straight to the point, sharing the baffling news with Key and Miriam, who sleeps beside Key. Before going rogue, Theo messes with the cars to prevent a car chase, but the car he chooses for his runaway plan is as bad as the others. The car is a no-go, and Luke's team sprints on their tail, but, as a sign of fate, the car finally starts, and they manage to leave. Sometime later, Theo, Key, and Miriam arrive at Jasper's, asking for help. Jasper is so friendly that he ends up looking alien to that whole reality. He's excited about Key's pregnancy and the future of humankind. Key finds a moment to sit back and rest a little, at last. She and Theo bond over a conversation about Miriam's awkwardness. It feels like the right moment to talk about her pregnancy. Key is 8 months pregnant and doesn't know who the father is. She reveals the strangeness of knowing she was pregnant, something that didn't exist anymore. Jasper comes back home with the wackiest plan to get them out. To hijack a police boat. Theo has to choose what to be more perplexed about, Key's baby name, Froley, or Jasper's crazy plan. Before the plan is afoot, Jasper finds the time to poke Theo's emotional wounds by talking about Julian and Theo's relationship, and the loss of their baby boy, Gil, who would be about Key's age now. After a good night of sleep, they wake up to the disturbing sound of alarms going off. Jasper's property is being invaded. Everyone rushes to the getaway car. Everyone but Jasper. He assures Theo that he'd only drag them down, and that he's perfectly capable to save himself and his partner, as he always did. Theo, Key, and Miriam go to a safer distance and observes the invasion from afar. It's Patrick and his group. They have no mercy toward Jasper, who nevertheless doesn't lose his fun character before perishing. Theo has now lost every single person he had cared about and loved deeply. They drive away, mourning the loss of such a dear man. Everyone but Key, who hasn't a clue of what happened to Jasper back home. They get to an abandoned hospital that's falling to pieces. Key finds solace in a broken swing, perhaps remembering a childhood she never had. Inside the devastated facility, Miriam tells her story to Theo. It's as heartbreaking as his own. Somehow, Theo and Miriam find comfort in each other's words of kindness. That's all they have left, after all. As usual, their time to breathe is interrupted. This time, by a paramilitary car. Theo faces it and confronts the sole passenger by telling him he's looking for a guy named Sid. He calls him names, and the officer comes together to test his courage. It turns out, the man is an ally and Jasper's friend, called Sid. During the short car drive, Key feels unwell, but has to conceal it at all costs. Their lives depend on it. They pretend to be prisoners, get on a bus, and follow Sid's instructions to find a woman named Marichka. She's the designated helper now. The bus is packed with hungry and sick people, but Theo, Miriam, and Key must try to blend in while concealing Key's secret. They reach a checkpoint as Key's water breaks. It's hard to pretend now. Miriam and Theo do everything at their disposal to draw attention to themselves instead of the screaming Key. The result of it is that, after pretending to be an immigrant, Miriam gets arrested and taken out of the bus, only to vanish from the face of the earth. The bus sets off again, carrying only Theo and Key this time. The bus stops at a chaotic station, and soon Key loses Theo out of her sight. They have to stick together and get to Marichka. They don't speak the same language, but Marichka understands they need help and a place to hide. The baby is coming, and Theo asks Marichka to leave the room so Key can rest and have her baby without calling attention. The dogs outside announce the baby. A baby girl is born, and the fight to hide her continues. Sid and Marichka get back to the room the next morning. Key is nervous, afraid that her baby girl will cry and they will get caught. Marichka's dog knows there's a newborn in the room, but Key tries to distract it. It's inevitable. Sid sees the baby, and Marichka gets desperate. Sid immediately takes them hostage, and Marichka jumps at him with a hammer. Key, Theo, Marichka, and the baby have to pierce through the mayhem on the streets to get to the boat and run away safely. They reach a city bank that's now occupied by a rebel group that Marichka knows well. The safe passage is granted after they see the miracle baby, and inside, they find some fleeting peace and quiet again. The contrast of an elderly woman singing a newborn to sleep is an emotional thing to witness. It's time to go and get on the boat. The streets are a living hell, especially for a woman with a newborn, a man with a hurt foot, and a lady with a dog. They get close to the port, but the unexpected happens. Luke, Patrick, and their gang surprise them, and Luke takes Key and the baby with him. Before Patrick finds the opportunity to put an end to Theo's life, another shootout breaks loose, and he manages to escape. Marichka can't follow him. Theo keeps sneaking in and out of trashed cars in an attempt to find Key and the baby. The shootout intensifies as he approaches Luke's hideout. Theo is in the building where Luke is hiding, and he also sees Patrick. Everything is so hectic that no one sees Theo there, and to find Key wouldn't be hard. Theo hears a crying baby amid the shootout. Theo, Key, and the baby are reunited, but Luke won't let them go so easily. He threatens to shoot, but the army outside is stronger and gets his full attention and commitment. While Luke fights for his own life, Theo gets Key and the baby and gets out of there. The commotion as they descend the building stairs is staggering. The crying baby opens space for Theo and Key to cross, and the people behind them cry in awe of the impossible. The military group in the streets holds a ceasefire for a few seconds as they pass through. Miraculously, they find Marichka along the way. The long-awaited boat is there, in a canal. Theo tries to convince Marichka to hop in, but she refuses, and he's too weak to insist. The fog is dense, but the noisy war gets quieter as Theo rows away. As they approach a lifeline, aircrafts pierce the air and bombard the city they've left behind. They wait for the ship that will take them to safety, but Key breaks in desperation as she sees blood in the boat. She thinks that's it for her and her baby, but Theo puts her mind at ease when reveals he's the one who was wounded as they left the building. Key mourns the imminent loss of her guardian, right when they're so close to reaching a hopeful ending as the ship approaches. But Theo is too weak, and before he loses consciousness she reveals the baby's name, Dylan. Theo is at peace, knowing he can finally rest after fulfilling his promise to Julian. He can be with his family again. At last,